All right, it is 9:30. We're going to get rolling with my presentation here. Before we get started, just to let everyone know, I have the closed captioning enabled. So if you want to have that on so that you can hear and read what I'm saying a little bit better, feel free to do so. I'm just going to start sharing my screen here. And can everybody hear me all right? Good. Can everybody see the screen that I'm sharing now? Wonderful. Okay, thank you for being here. First off, I'd like to acknowledge that I am bringing this presentation to you from the territory of the Lheidli T'enneh, and it's on these lands that I live, work, and play. This is my presentation on the impact of sleep on the brain and how it affects learning. More accurately, it's about the relationship between sleep and learning and what happens when we get tired and how being tired negatively affects our ability to learn. I was excited about this topic for a number of reasons. First of all, I have a long history of having difficulty sleeping. It may be due in part to the fact that I worked shift work on and off for a period of time. I've worked exceptionally long hours regularly for part of my career. Currently, I have small children who regularly disrupt my sleep. And because of family and commitments and everything else, I have often sacrificed sleep in order to get things done. Um, None of these are unique to me. I think these are things that affect a lot of us, or most of us. And the juggling of life and sleep and commitments and family are a regular challenge for us. And then when we decide to try to fit in some learning there and we struggle in any one of those capacities, it becomes frustrating. And we're going to talk a little bit about how it affects learning tonight. The second reason why I chose this topic is because in doing the PIDP, I am a student myself. And if there is any way that I can improve my ability to process and retain information, I will gladly take it. And the third reason is to be able to better educate my students on how to improve their learning, how they can be more efficient and improve their odds of success both in the classroom and in their chosen field beyond the material that we present to them in the course. So hopefully there's some information in here that you will find useful and that you will be able to pass along to your students. There's a common cultural perception that sleep is a luxury or a sign of laziness. Working long hours is often seen as a badge of honor in a lot of places. Personally, my background is in trades. I started out as a heavy duty mechanic, and I'll tell you, in a lot of the fields and a lot of the trades, in spite of any new workplace rules or regulations regarding length of hours or consecutive days, even though there's been a lot more open-mindedness in the trades in the last decade or two, and we've become more health conscious about both our physical and mental health, it's still not uncommon to hear people bragging about working an extreme number of hours or days in a row. It's been proven time and time again, and I've personally seen it where fatigue has nearly caused accidents, injuries, and just compromised the quality of our work. And more than once, I've sent people home in cabs because they were a hazard on the job site to themselves and others. And North American society really needs to change how we look at sleep, how we value sleep, and how we prioritize adequate rest as a foundation for our own health and productivity. In China, for example, sleep is viewed as a public activity, and people are often seen sleeping in subways, restaurants, and libraries. Taking short naps, especially after lunch in the Chinese culture, is common practice and is often viewed as valuable and a necessary part of the workday. with many workplaces now encouraging and facilitating the practice and even offering designated sleep areas. The Chinese government is aiming to increase the average sleep duration to 7 or 8 hours per day for its adult population by 2030. As I was doing this research, I actually had a long drive with a coworker, and at one point he fell asleep on the drive. And when he woke up, he apologized for falling asleep. And because of some of this research I'd been doing, I thought that was so interesting. Are we conditioned to apologize for falling asleep in someone else's presence? Because we're not being good company? I said to him, as I do to everyone I travel with, I'd rather, if you're tired, that you do sleep. Because at some point, there's a good chance I'm going to get tired and you're going to need to drive. Getting the rest we need when we need it is something we need to encourage for a whole host of reasons. So, why is sleep so important? What is actually happening while we're asleep? I would imagine that most of us have some knowledge about sleep just from what we've heard or seen in the media. We know that we need sleep to physically recover and to be healthy. We get tired, we run out of energy, and we know that sleep fixes that. We might have heard terms like REM sleep or dream states, but most often we hear about sleep as it relates to our physical health and less so about brain health and learning. Our sleep is actually comprised of different phases, cycles, and stages. The first phase is NREM, or non-rapid eye movement sleep, and it's made up of 4 stages. Stage 1 is the transition between wakefulness and sleep, the initial point when we start to doze off. Stage 2 is where we start to get into a light sleep. We start to get a regulated heartbeat and breathing, and we get a little bit of a drop in body temperature. Stages 3 and 4 are where the deep sleep happens. And this is where our physical restoration and memory consolidation starts to happen. The memory consolidation piece is the part that we're concerned about for our goals as instructors and student. And it tends not to be mentioned as readily when we hear about sleep for physical recovery. The next phase of sleep is REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. And it's quite a common term now that most of us have heard, although I don't think we understand it as much as we should. So during rapid eye movement sleep, we experience exactly that, rapid eye movements. We also have increased brain activity, and if we didn't know, and it sounds a little bit concerning sometimes, we suffer from a little bit of muscle paralysis. This is also the phase where most of our dreaming occurs. In the course of a normal night, we'll often cycle between these phases and stages multiple times. We don't actually progress through them in any normal or linear way in the course of a night, which is what most of us have come to believe. We think we get tired, close our eyes, start to drift off. We get into our deep sleep, and then we slowly start to wake up, is the common perception. But if that were the case, any night where we drift off, start to dream, wake up in the middle of the night, go back to sleep, and dream again wouldn't fit that mold. So this is an interesting concept that we can shuffle and shift between these stages, sometimes even missing certain stages in the course of a night, which can be concerning. In spite of us being asleep, this is why our brains actually remain quite active during these cycles. And in some cases, we know our brains and bodies don't recover and recharge adequately. Anyone who's woken up feeling less than rested or even more tired than when they went to sleep can attest to the fact that sleep isn't always effective in our recovery process. Unfortunately, that's not a rare thing in our world, and it can be frustrating. It's happened to me regularly, and I've talked to a lot of people that suffer from that. We have trouble either turning our minds off, getting into those necessary stages that we need for proper recovery, both physically and mentally. And we're going to look at a little bit about that closer to the end of the presentation. More than just helping us to feel rested, sleep, in the brain specifically, is essential for the type of processes that support learning. Things such as memory consolidation, communication between nerve cells, and without sleep, this communication between nerve cells doesn't allow us to form or maintain pathways in the brain that allow us to learn or create memories. The removal of toxins that accumulate while we are awake, it also happens while we're asleep. The longer we're awake and using our brains, the more metabolic waste builds up. Sleep is when your brain finally gets the chance to clear this out. These conditions make it harder to concentrate and respond quickly to our surroundings when we don't get enough sleep to allow the memory consolidation to take place, for the nerves to properly communicate, and for the toxins to get flushed out. It's for all these reasons that sufficient quality sleep is crucial for optimal brain performance and learning. Studies have even shown that sleep strengthens the brain's ability to refine motor skills. This means that you can actually wake up and perform certain tasks better, even without extra physical practice. I can't say that I've noticed it myself because the piano is still a complete mystery to me. If we don't get enough sleep on a continuous basis, it can lead to a range of problems, both mental and physical. Again, the physical ones are the ones that we tend to hear about more often. Increased vulnerability to conditions such as hypertension, obesity, diabetes, and stroke. But there are mental and psychological problems that arise as well. Depression and anxiety become more prominent, or we're more susceptible to. We start to have difficulty making decisions and problem solving, and we have difficulty concentrating and learning. All of these together can start to contribute to premature aging as well as, impair the brain's ability to process and retain information. Most of us have felt the effects of prolonged wakefulness and recognize that it impairs the brain's ability to effectively process and store new information. Typically, as the day goes on, it gets harder to concentrate and remember new things. A 90-minute nap has been shown to counteract this, improving learning capacity compared to staying awake. Remember those toxins we mentioned that need to get cleaned out? This is part of what happens when we have a chance to get a rest for an hour and a half. It's been suggested that incorporating naps and ensuring adequate nighttime sleep can enhance learning efficiency, which has practical applications not only in education, but also in professional settings. This starts to make sense with some of the knowledge that we now have and will see moving forward. When we start to feel mental fatigue setting in, what's happening or not happening in the brain? We've mentioned a few of things already, but it's in the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the region that is crucial for decision making, emotional regulation, and motivation, where it begins to show signs of reduced activity. This reduced activity can then lead to diminished focus, slower reaction times, and decreased motivation. After a sleepless night, basically, brain cells become sluggish. As this happens, it can lead to mental lapses, which affect both the memory as well as visual perception. And if our visual perception starts to suffer and we can't remember anything, it's no wonder we have problems learning. This is why it compromises the brain's ability to process information rapidly and accurately. Even when we're awake, certain regions of the brain can enter a sleep-like state, leading to these lapses while the rest of the brain remains awake. Lots of times we experience this as zoning out, walking or maybe even driving somewhere, and we realize we can't remember the last few minutes. We've kind of lost touch with what's going on around us, but certain parts of our brain have kept us moving, kept us responding, but somewhere in there, some part of it decided to take a nap. It's scary, but interesting how that can happen. Activities that require constant attention and require us to continually process new information can be particularly draining, like sitting in a classroom, focused on learning something new or challenging. It's no wonder students tend to zone out on us. If we can learn to recognize the signs of mental fatigue, we can take steps to mitigate it and maintain our cognitive performance during difficult times. So how do we do that? Well, we can prioritize challenging tasks and do them in the morning during peak energy times. We can take regular breaks to allow the brain to rest and recover. We can maintain a balanced lifestyle, including proper nutrition, regular physical activity, and sufficient sleep. We can practice stress management techniques such as mindfulness or relaxation exercises to reduce cognitive load. Listening to music can elevate mood and increase motivation. And I think most of us know that in moderation, caffeine can temporarily enhance alertness and concentration. These methods are often aimed at increasing our dopamine levels to counteract the effects of mental fatigue. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and motivation. It supports executive functions such as holding our attention, allowing us to make decisions, and supporting our working memory. When dopamine levels decrease, tasks begin to feel harder, and we don't feel the same reward from achieving them. Dopamine levels can also help to regulate our emotions and stress responses, which I think is something we'd really like to encourage in a classroom environment. Elevated dopamine levels are associated with a more positive outlook and greater emotional control. So there's even more rewards to making sure we feel rested and ready to learn. When we start to feel fatigue setting in, we can usually recognize at some point that our acquisition and recall have begun to suffer. It's more difficult to concentrate or remember what was said. Anytime you've read the same line or paragraph or page of a book over and over, and it just never seems to think in, this is when our ability to focus and gather information and even remember things we have learned previously becomes difficult. The effect on memory consolidation is less obvious to notice than our acquisition and recall, but many researchers now think it actually may be even more profound. Reduced sleep time or the loss of specific sleep stages that I mentioned earlier can dramatically inhibit a person's ability to consolidate recently formed memories. Research has now suggested that the most critical time for memory consolidation is actually following a lesson. If this period is lost, if we don't get a good sleep after a class, if we pull an all-nighter studying for a test, or somebody has a night job, or we just end up getting sick and being up all night, we can't make up that time or those memories and the consolidation that goes with it. Even when we understand and acknowledge the importance of sleep, trying to balance it with work, school, family, social activities, and personal time can still be overwhelming. It tends to be the first thing that we sacrifice. This is the struggle I often face myself, and the irony of this topic is that the only time for me to do the research and create this presentation that I had was after everyone in my family had gone to bed at the sacrifice of my own sleep. Not uncommon for any number of reasons, even though I've done this research and I understand the importance of sleep. Now that we know sleep is essential for memory consolidation and learning, we need to talk again about when to sleep and what happens in these times. We mentioned this a little bit already, but it definitely deserves some focus. Matt Walker, who's an incredible authority on sleep, has said that sleep before learning prepares the brain to absorb new information, while sleep after learning helps solidify that information into our long-term memory. So it's about more than just being able to stay awake and pay attention in class. We need to get adequate rest after the lesson in order to ingrain the information into our brains and align it with previous knowledge. I'm sure many people can relate to some of the symptoms and experiences I've mentioned. Oftentimes, I've felt them when I've been sitting in a classroom. During my time in trade school, I was one of the worst for falling asleep in class. It didn't matter if I sat in the front or the back. It wasn't a matter of if I was going to fall asleep, it was a matter of when. Even though I was excited to be there, I was willing to learn, I was interested, it was a battle to stay awake. I chewed gum, I drank coffee, I'd stand in the back of the room. The trade-off was if I slept in class, I usually didn't sleep at night, so I had more time to study. Not the healthiest. So now we need to look at what needs to happen in order for us to actually learn something so that we can start to understand how learning and sleep begin to intersect. In order to learn something, we need to encounter some new information, typically in a classroom or book. We need to be able to pay attention to it. We need to coordinate it with what we already know, then store it in our memory and apply it. Inadequate sleep negatively affects most of, if not all of these learning processes in some way. So it makes sense that in order to learn effectively, we need, effective sleep at the right times. To bring some of this together, if we don't get a good sleep on Monday night, it's hard to pay attention on Tuesday. That part I don't think is new to anyone. But if we don't get a good sleep on Tuesday night, we can actually forget what we learned on Monday. So things such as work, personal commitments, or illness, like we've mentioned, that cause us to lose sleep or have poor sleep can be even more detrimental to our learning than we may have previously believed. In a study led by Carnegie Mellon University, 600 first-year students were found to average only 6.5 hours of sleep per night. Students sleeping less than 6 hours experienced a significant decline in their GPA. Each hour of sleep lost equaled a 0.07 decrease in their GPA. The University of Utah's neurology department emphasizes that at least 7 hours of sleep each night is vital for maintaining optimal brain health. And they've even suggested that adults over 60 get between 7 and 9 hours. So it's interesting going back to the Chinese government wanting to increase how much their population sleeps at night, kind of ties together with some of the numbers that we now see. In order to get the best sleep possible and get the most out of our learning, we need to focus on our sleep hygiene. So, sleep hygiene is often explained as the practices and habits that promote consistent, quality sleep and help to maintain good sleep health. Another way to look at it is to talk about creating the ideal conditions for falling asleep and staying asleep through the night. Some of the things that fall into this realm of our sleep hygiene are the practices of things such as maintaining a consistent sleep schedule, making sure that we go to bed and wake up at the same time every day so that our body gets to know the rhythm and falls asleep faster and more efficiently. Limiting our screen time before bed, avoiding electronic devices at least an hour before sleep is commonly recommended now and a challenge in today's world often. We need to create a relaxing bedtime routine, engaging in calming activities like reading or meditation to prepare us for the night. We need to optimize our sleep environment to ensure our bedroom is dark, quiet, and cool. We should limit our caffeine and any heavy meals directly before bed. We should also get daily physical activity. It's difficult to slow the body down and put it to sleep if it never revs up and gets moving during the day. It's not uncommon to have ups and downs in the quality of our sleep, but as long as you're following healthy habits and getting regular quality sleep, the occasional late night or interrupted sleep is normal. We still have lives, we still need to get things done, we still want to have fun, but maybe just not every night. Some of us have done that, typically in our 20s. Lack of sleep or difficulty sleeping starts to become a concern when our daily routines and our overall health begin to suffer. If you apply the best sleep hygiene you can and still have difficulty getting to sleep or staying asleep, there may be an underlying factor. Making an appointment with your doctor to discuss sleep-related problems can help you determine if you have any underlying conditions contributing to sleep disturbances. Things such as obstructive sleep apnea, central sleep apnea, insomnia, hypersomnia, and REM sleep behavior disorder, to name a few, can be grounds for doctors often recommending a sleep study. I've actually spent the night in a sleep study with all these wires hooked up to me. And for me, after a couple months of terrible sleep and missed nights repeatedly, just like going to the doctor any other time, that night in the sleep study, I had the best sleep I'd had in weeks. So if you're dealing with mental health issues that you feel may be impacting your sleep, consider talking with a psychologist or another mental health expert, and they can help you to determine if symptoms related to depression, anxiety, grief, or any other mental health may be contributing to poor sleep. Understanding the relationship between sleep and memory has substantial practical implications that influence our educational strategies as instructors and students and enhance learning as well as cognitive function in all its capacities. Sleep really is about integrating new information into existing information. And that's really what our learning is all about. It's been said that sleep resets the brain's learning circuits. And to quote an unknown source, we get smart during the day, we get wise at night. Thank you for being here, for listening to my presentation. Hopefully, there's something in here that you're able to pass on to your students or something that might help you yourself. I would like to give a brief shout out as you see the list of references that I used for my research. There were two authors who I found extremely easy to read, and they have a wealth of resources online that you can find. The one that I've mentioned already, Matt Walker, is incredible, as well as Robert Stickgold. And they have a number of publications, TED Talks, YouTube videos that are interesting and informative and took me down a bunch of rabbit holes. And I went so far as to order one of Matt Walker's books. Unfortunately, it didn't arrive in time to be included in this research, but I am looking forward to reading it, and I have already started it now. So thank you again for watching. Good luck in your own research and your own presentations and with your own PIDP and in your teachings. All the best. Thanks for watching.